Hello, I'm Hugh Coakley from the Guildford Dragon News. Guildford, like other towns, appears to be at the crossroads with so many changes happening at the same time. Our high street is struggling with massively and seemingly inevitable retraction of retail in the town centre. We have a local plan that looks to be out of date just 18 months after it was rushed through before the election in May 19. And we have changes to working practices speeded up by COVID, which is affecting office demands and transport needs. And then we have climate change. And wrestling with these issues under broad responsibilities, we have with us today Councillor John Rigg, Guildford Borough Council Executive Member and Lead Councillor for regeneration, including the Town Centre Master Plan and major projects. John, thank you very much for talking to the Guildford Dragon News.
Thank you for inviting me, Hugh, and good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to listeners.
Thank you. John, could you give an overview of your roles on the council?
Gosh, yes, I'm very happy to try. I have three principal roles. I have the portfolio for major projects, I have urban regeneration, and I have the role of chair of the joint committee. They're all different. Major projects, there are between 2 and 10 sizable projects. The largest is Wayside at 360 million. That's delivering 1,500 homes, and it's delivering wonderful riverside neighbourhood, new neighbourhood, instead of the existing users. The existing site, many of you will know, it's occupied by a council depot, allotments and waste disposal and sewage works, all of which will be relocated to free up a riverside site, which is exactly what we should be doing. It's a long-term project, but that's one of them. I've got 4 major infrastructure projects. Now, people might say, well, why are Guildford Borough Council taking on infrastructure projects? And when it really is Surrey County Council's role, but we inherited them from the last council who took them on. There's the A31, A331 hotspots, that's improving the roundabout and the flows at the end of the Hogsback, which lots of people will know. There are long hold-ups and there's lots of pollution and other issues. Ash Road Bridge, that's a major project where the railway crossing is closed for half an hour per hour sometimes at rush hours. And with increased train services, it's going to go up to 50 minutes. And Ash really does deserve a relief road there to take the traffic away. And we're just going for planning. We're just submitting the planning application to the planning committee in January, all being well. And so that will be another landmark step in the process. The SMC, the Sustainable Movement Corridor, that's to try and encourage modal shift to footpaths and cycleways, but it also includes some roadworks. So that's particularly the area between the hospital, the science park, the hospital, and the cathedral. And that is traffic light changes and cycleways and widening of slip roads. And then also the Walnut Bridge replacement and 2 new rail stations which we're working on, which is Guildford West and Guildford East. Guildford West by the hospital as part of the Manor Park and the university's strategic site development. And then also Gosden Hill, which is where you come off the A3 at Merrow, where there's a housing scheme again. And we hope to have a rail station there as part of the planning game. So there is also some other little projects. North Street's one of them, and the Spectrum 2, which is the replacement of the Spectrum scheme, which is probably, we hope, to get as much life out of the existing buildings at Spectrum as we can, but it is showing signs of wear and tear, and it will reach a point where it's unsustainable and we'll have to look at a new installation.
John, that is an absolutely huge list of projects. It is, for a modest-sized borough council, that is a huge list of projects. does the council have the expertise that it needs to be able to deliver these projects? Now, it strikes me that we don't necessarily have a history of delivering projects. It strikes me there was a bit of a spectacular own goal on the Wayside Urban Village, where the Secretary of State rejected our application to change the to take over the allotments. Do we actually have the project experience that we need to deliver?
I would say, I have to choose my words carefully here. We are not an infrastructure authority, that is Surrey County Council, and they get 91p in the pound, or they and the police authority get 91p in the pound, and Guildford Borough Council get 9p in the pound. So why we took on these infrastructure projects is another question with probably quite a long answer. But neither have we traditionally had the officers with the skills, and we haven't got the statutory authority to do some of these roadworks. So we do have to rely on Surrey County Council, and that is not always, sadly to say, and that was not always easy and problem-free. They require something called Section 278 and commuted payments. So even it's on projects where we have picked up the bill for projects they should be paying for, to get their approval, we sometimes have to pay their charges, which is absolutely fine when it's developers delivering housing schemes and they've got profits. But where it's from authority to authority, I'm not yet persuaded that it's terribly fair. But we are in discussions with Surrey, so fingers crossed things might improve a bit. On Wayside,
Can we get on to the specifics of various projects? I was hoping to talk about North Street first, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a consultation starting for North Street development on Monday. It seems as if this project has been on the cusp of starting for years and years. Could you give us an update of the timescale, the programme for the scheme now, and do you think that programme, presumably a programme dictated by the developer, Berkeley Homes in St Edwards, is the programme realistic?
Right, where are we now? Well, we were elected May 2019. It took till December of 2019 before I started to find out exactly what was going on and get to grips with the project. There's a lot of history and there's a lot of constraints on the site, and so you need to catch up a bit, which we have. We then embarked on negotiations with the developer. The developer is, I have to say, the developer is recognised as one of the best developers in terms of quality in the country. So we're lucky to have the right developer. But the developer didn't own the site. The site was partly owned by M&G, who owned the Friary Centre, and partly owned by Guildford Borough Council. So we've had a tripartite negotiation, and that has been very, very involved, because one of the key ingredients of North Street is removing temporarily the bus station from North Street, putting it onto the Portsmouth Road car park site, building a new one, and then moving it back. And you won't be surprised to hear that the logistics and the planning and the contracts and the agreements that have to be reached to kind of move that forward, for the developer to then say, yes, I'm happy with the outline of the deal, takes some time. But after, I think there's 8 previous attempts to develop this site, we are now very, very happy with where we are. I have been absolutely passionate that this should be a proper consultation, not a consultation where the finished designs are presented to the community and they can have any colour they like, providing it's black. No.
The contractor has said that he won't be showing options at this particular exhibition. He'll only be showing outline plans. Will the public get another chance to have a real, be able to compare schemes?
There will be 3 chances, Hugh. I'm pleased to say there will be 3. This is the first, which is to introduce people to the site, introduce them to the constraints, introduce them to what is planned on the bus issues. But it is to invite everybody's views. And the website for people to register to the presentation on Monday evening is www.northstreetregeneration.co.uk.
It's all right, John. We've actually done an article on the consultation, and we shall put this a tag to this particular thing. Are you happy with the scheme plans as you've seen them? A year ago or so, they showed the environmental statement scoping report showed 15 stories high development. Briefly, is that still in?
No, it isn't in, because there is no commitment made on either side by story heights. The sequence of events is the developer said, and quite fairly, until we know we can find a commercial deal here and a way to go forward, we are reluctant to throw the millions that the design would require. We wanted to find a way forward. As soon as we find a way forward, we will ask what the community wants. And there is no commitment to deliver any project of any story height. I mean, clearly, two-story thatched cottages is not going to be viable. We have to provide something that is going to be viable to cover the cost of the bus station and everything else. But there's some key points here, Hugh, which I'd like to get across. Firstly, we need new homes. We've got to meet our housing targets if we're going to stop more incursions into Greenbelt, which just means more and more traffic coming into the town centre. We need a new neighbourhood, a new quarter to bring life into the town centre. We've got to help the high street. If you look at the state of the high street, so there is lots of reasons why we need to actually have a serious development here.
Okay.
But I am desperate the community are committed.
I was surprised. Sorry to interrupt, John. I was surprised to see in your announcement to the council meeting on Tuesday that you're now planning to sell the freehold of the land the council owns on the site to the developer Berkeley Homes. Are we not giving up any influence we have on the outcome of the scheme by selling the land to the developer?
That's a very good question. The situation is we are close to signing heads of terms. Then there will be some months to arrive at the exchange of contracts, which is the first legally binding agreement. And then there will be a period up to the contract being completed. However, the key moment in time is at exchange of contracts. And by then, we hope to have gone through an awful lot of the consultation. And at that point in time, when we've done 2 consultations and we've identified what people are happy with, that's what will be attached to the contract. That's what the developer will deliver.
And that's when you'll sell the land, is that what you're saying?
And that's only after then that everybody is happy. Not everybody, you'll never get all the people happy all the time. At that point in time, we will then be comfortable to arrange the disposal.
I mean, why are you selling the land? Why not keep it as an investment? What would you do with the whatever 10 million you're going to get for it? You're only going to invest it in property again, or are you thinking of something else?
Well, I can't say exactly what will happen to those funds, but at the moment you will be aware that the council finances are in a desperate state of affairs. The car parking revenues disappeared. The revenue at
but you can't use the sale of land to service your.
We can't use capital for revenue, but we will need capital for some of our capital projects.
Okay.
Where we might have been able to resource some of it from the revenue account.
All right. Okay, John. Another one of your big projects is the town centre master plan. It's something that's been close to your heart for as long
Yes.
as you've been in the public eye in Guildford, as far as I'm aware. Can you give our readers a brief update on progress on the town centre master plan?
I'd be delighted to, Hugh. This year has been taken by the local authority procurement process. So if you want an external professional team, a multidisciplinary team of transportation people, flooding people, housing delivery people, if you want to bring all of that group together and you want a really good quality team, you have to go through a procurement process. We're through that now. The very first project meetings are just starting to take place. And the phase one of the development, which will involve really getting to grips with all the issues that the town faces. COVID has really brought it home that we've got to know where Guildford's future lies. We've got to understand, we've seen a situation where retail has disappeared as a motivator for keeping the town. We've seen empty offices, prime offices. We've seen one of the buildings Guildford Council sold on Stoke Crossroads. There was no interest from office occupiers to take it, even though it wasn't that old. So it is residential, which is going to, we're going to rely on quite heavily. And also to pay for any infrastructure works, such as flood remediation or transportation, we will need government grant. We will need infrastructure grant. And for that, these days, you've got to deliver homes on brownfield sites. So there's a big project to get to grips with. But as soon as we start to have some ideas coming forward, we'll be, as on North Street, we'll be going out, we'll be assembling stakeholder groups to participate in the second phase, which is where you start to have choices. The first phase is...
So you hope to have a draft town centre master plan by when? Mid-21?
No. The first phase is understanding who owns what land, what the planning policies that affect it, what the flooding issues are, and how you identify solutions to the flooding issue, which in itself is no mean project, which is why it's not addressed for 100 years. All of that has to be pulled together. Then the disciplines have to work together to find solutions.
Really? When? End of 21?
Yeah, probably mid 21 towards third quarter of 21, all being well.
Okay. John, we don't have huge amounts of time. Can you give us a brief update on Spectrum? It strikes me that Spectrum has been a fantastic place for Guildford and families. But I came to Guildford 30 years ago, roughly, and Spectrum was new then. But it looks like we're going to have to knock it down. I've seen sheds last longer than 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, what's happening?
Right.
Are we going to be building another Spectrum that's going to last us 30 years? I think the previous one, the Bedford Road Leisure Centre, lasted about 25 years. I mean, what are we building?
Well, it is, I have to say, it is disappointing, the life of this current building, or as it appears to be. There are clear signs and evidence that this building has a limited life. And that's starting to become very evident as the costs of keeping it going increase. I think what we are focusing on is, firstly, identifying how much more life we can get out of it. And that means you've got to replace a huge amount of plant, and you've got to actually work on producing cost estimates which identify where the break-even point is. You actually, if you have to replace a major air handling unit, with a life, the air handling unit may have a life of 20 years, for instance. You don't want to have to pay for that in the last year of its life. So you have to plan it very, very carefully. That's the process we're going through now. That will set how long we can make it last. And then that's the time we've got to identify a replacement for it, which everybody wants. Everyone's hugely proud of the facilities there and how important it is for the town. We've all, well, not all, certainly I've had took my children there and had the benefits of it. I don't think there's any doubt we want the facility. But what we can't do is rush into it, and we don't intend to.
Okay. So, John, I'm very, very sorry that we can't talk about all of your responsibilities. It is fascinating, but just but time dictates, as always. Just one last question. You were elected about 18 months ago. If you knew then what you know now, would you put yourself up for election?
Yes, I would, because although it sometimes takes 7 days a week, and it is not unusual to be on screen for all day and all evening, and the first year was very, very difficult, with lots of obstacles and lots of things processes to get used to. I really think we're starting to make some good progress. I mean, just generally, under Joss Bigmore's leadership, we're addressing transparency, we're addressing proper audit process, we're addressing governance. We're gradually introducing a lot of changes, and they're imperceptibly small, but they are happening. And on all the projects, I'm optimistic, the existing projects we inherited, that we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully it's not an oncoming train. And on the town centre master plan, we've got a great team in place for the first time ever in the history of Guildford. And we're going to work with the university as well, because they're important stakeholders. We'll be talking to the hospital, and we'll be talking to residents groups and all other interested parties in due course. But we need, particularly with COVID, that has really brought it home. We need to know where this town's going. And the research that is the precursor to doing the master plan development, the research is a really key point. And that's what we're currently doing the brief for.
Councillor John Rigg, thank you very much for talking to the Guildford Dragon News.
Thank you, Hugh.